Hey everyone, welcome to section 4.2, where we're going to be talking about using PWM pins. So the idea of this video is going to be to flip the script from the previous video, which flipped the script from the previous section. Yeah, that's not confusing at all. So this is going to be talking about controlling basically any of your outputs in a finer way. Now this can also apply to inputs, but that's for the future. For now, we're going to focus on a finer way of controlling things. So not just sort of high and low, but the in-between, all right? So, PWM pins, here's the gist. You'll notice that this is kind of the one thing, or rather one of the two things that we haven't covered yet. The other is analog input, but for now we're going to focus on these PWM pins. Now, these are denoted with the squiggly marker before the number that specifies the digital pins, right? So this 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, these are all the PWM pins on the Arduino. And these enable you to control the amount, right? The number of voltage that is sent to a particular component, all right? And typically, digital signals only send high and low, right? So they either turn on something at its maximum possible capability, or they turn it off, right? But PWM pins, what they do is they switch these signals really fast. So they allow you to control some signals, or rather some voltage levels in between, all right? So this is what allows you to control that voltage output. Now, PWM is a little bit more complicated than the way I just described it. I sort of gave you a TLDR version of what PWM is, so if you're more interested in reading about what it is, there are plenty of articles and videos online that'll do a much better job of explaining it. But I would highly recommend that you sort of go with this higher level of understanding first with my video, and then if you're ever interested, feel free to check out another video online, all right? So, well, how do we work with this in code, right? So we're going to be using a new function called analog write, okay? And this is going to take in two values. So it's similar to digital write, but a little bit different. The first one is a pin, right? So that's just like digital write. The second one is a number between 0 and 255. So instead of high and low, we get to pick a number. And this number is going to specify the voltage that powers the component. So here's an example, all right? And this is the example that we're going to be working with. 255 could be the highest brightness an LED could be lit up. 100 could dim the LED, so somewhere in between, and then 0 will turn it off. All right, so that's kind of the thing that's basically the idea that we'll be working with when we wire our LED and then code it up. All right, so let's go ahead and actually start that. So I'm going to close this old circuit because I don't need it. Let's make a new circuit. Let's call it 4.2 circuit because naming schemes I'm clever with naming schemes. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is wire an LED, but I want you to wire the LED to pin 3. So if you really want an exercise, go ahead, just pause this video, go ahead and wire it real quick. Okay, let's get started. So breadboard, yeah, I'm going to use a breadboard. You don't really have to, but I just am because I think it's good practice. Let's go ahead and extend the ground pin. Okay, cool. Then we're going to grab an LED. We're going to grab a resistor. Okay, and then we are going to wire this straight to pin 3. That's not lined up at all, so I don't want a diagonal wire, so I'm going to do something like this. Okay, let's use red for that. Let's go line up the wire. All right, and then we just need ground. Oh, that's not ground. That's going to 5 volts. Ground. Okay, cool. So there's our LED. Now the next thing that we're going to do is code it. So the nice part about writing code for this LED, right, is it's basically exactly like digital write. It's just that you now get to specify a number. That's pretty much it. That's really the only difference. So the first thing that I want to do is let's set up the LED, right? So set up the LED. So pin mode 3, this is going to be an output, right? And then it's going to be pin mode, or not pin mode, what am I saying? Analog write. And let's just start with 255, right? So pin 3, 255. Okay, let's start simulation. Okay, cool. We see the LED lit up. All is good, all is well. We're all happy, right? Now the next thing that we need to do is find out a way to see the difference. So instead of, well actually, first I want to just turn it off. Let's just make sure that works. Okay, so far, right, we've confirmed the functionality of analog write and we verified that it can do all the things that digital write can. All right, so that's cool. You know, it's not really what we're focusing on though, right? We want to focus on the in-between, right? So let's see what happens if I change this to like 50, right? Okay. It turns on, but it's kind of hard to tell right now, right? Like if it's actually different from like 255, let's say. So what we're going to do is blink the LED, but instead of turning it off on the second interval, right? Usually it's on off with the blink. We're going to turn it on and then make it dimmer on the blink, all right? So we're going to delay, let's do 1,000, and then analog write 3 with the 50, and then delay 1,000. So this should, right, this blinking, we know how blinking works, but instead of turning it off, we're just going to dim it, all right? Let's see. Okay, so here you can clearly see a difference, right? It goes brighter and then less bright. Bright, less bright. Light, less bright. Bright, less bright. All right? So that's basically the idea of analog write. Now, before I end the video, there's one thing I want to make sure you all know, and it's that not every component can support analog signals, all right? There are some signals that only work with discrete signals, or rather digital signals, right? Digital, discrete. That's kind of the analogy you want to work with. Digital, discrete, and then analog is more of just like, okay, I can go on a spectrum of values, right? So with digital, right, the only discrete values you can control are high and low, right? With analog, you have a whole bunch of discrete values that you can pick from, right? That's kind of the idea. So not every device is capable of analog signals, all right? Some only operate at a high or low level, okay? But others, like this LED, do indeed have the capability of working with somewhere in between, all right? So if you're ever working with a component that you haven't worked with before and you're wondering, okay, can I connect it to an analog pin or not? I would read up on the documentation and make sure you can control it at an analog level as opposed to a digital level, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, that wraps up this video on using analog write and PWM pins. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for watching.